One, two, three. Okay, I'm the first speaker of side opposition, and first of all, I'm going to deliver my rebuttals. Okay, let's look. But before that, let's look at government's case, right? Government's case relies on the fact that most of these companies will do bad once they have malicious ways in order to obtain money. They have because they're so powerful. They'll do all of these bad things that monopolize the whole system. We think that at the end of the day, these companies do mergers for a reason. We think that they want to expand because it's good business. It's good for their business, and in order for something to be good for their business, we think that they have to make the consumer comfortable using their business. We think that the whole argue their opposition's government's whole case relies on the fact that these companies will do harm, but we think that's not the case at all because if they do harm, we think that there's enough competition in the world to actually kick them out of their business, and we think that people will boycott them as well as there's also governments that will help them in stopping them. All right. Okay. So first of all, we think so let's start off with the rebuttals. Okay, we say that they say that information they say that information would be worse. The sale of information would be worse on their side, but they haven't expect. The only reason why they say it's significantly worse is the fact that it'll get bigger. We think that this will also apply in places where there's more companies. And we even think that in smaller companies, we think that they have an even bigger incentive because, of course, it's easy money, and they actually require more money, and then there's already big companies. So we think that that issue is not exclusive because their only reason is that it will make a bigger risk. And second of all, they say that Goto is specifically targeting you to buy stuff. We think that this is actually not really that bad because when the information is because you as a consumer you still want to have recommendations. Still want things that you actually kind of want the application to give you recommendations on brands that you don't actually want. So we think that the targeted advertising is completely fine in that sense, and it's not really inexclusive because we think that small companies still exchange information with one another. We think that and they also say that it's not under and it's not consented the fact that they actually sell our the fact that they take our information. And especially when these large mergers happen. Well, actually, these based on law and the thing is they actually do tell you they updated their terms and services. We can see this in Facebook, even though they didn't go towards another merger. What actually happened is Facebook was they when they updated the terms and services, they still updated, and we as a consumer still got a notification that we had to accept it. So we think that their whole argument on like how these people sell our data and without us knowing, without and it's not being just. We think that we don't know. We think that's not factual whatsoever. The point that in our whole case, we're going to tell you that at the end of the day, for the consumers, is going to be for us, the consumers, is going to be much better. It's going to be good for these companies to merge for several reasons. And also, finally, they also try to explain how they try to and final. Oh yeah, before that, we'll finally they try to explain that. Companies will more likely be will kill off competition, and that labor would be much more difficult. First of all, for the arguments against labor, we think that it's not really that big of a deal. We don't think really it's really that bad because like tech companies don't require a lot of people to work. So and there's currently a large amount of people that's actually working towards company. Not everyone is going to be hired at Google. So we think that we think that labor will still spread relatively well. And then finally, we think that it's going to use multiple companies to they say that consumers will stick to this specific company. Well, we think that right now consumers are smart enough to actually use in several companies. We think in instances where they use Gojek, they have Gojek and Shopee in their phone and Tokped and multiple other devices because they at the end of the day they want to actually they at the end of and at the end of the day, consumers are now smart enough to pick what's currently the hottest deal that's going around. So we think that their argument of that how consumers monopoly will exist, we think that's wrong. Okay, so first of all, what do we think that's good in our side? Why do we think that, and like I've explained before, companies are good. Right? Why for okay, so first of all, I'm going to explain you why we think mergers are good for people. All right. So first of all, we think that this is going to connect more and more people together. Why do we think so? We think that, but let's say in their side of the house, right? What's going to happen is you're going to have multiple companies who have multiple products with their own little bubbles. Let's say Tokped and Shopee, on their little, they operate based on provinces. We think that this is really really bad, right? We think that this is comparatively worse than ours of the house. Why? Because these people become isolated in their own environments, which doesn't really merit how good, doesn't really play to strength to technology. While in ours of the house, when companies merge, they merge together not only their information, they also merge their people and their products too. So what happens is that one, if a company dominates East Indonesia and merges with a company that joins West Indonesia, now suddenly a person from Aceh can now sell something to a person all the way in Papua. So we think that that kind of merger, and how these people interact with each other, and will aid interaction between these small actors, aid interaction between these consumers. We think that's going to be a good thing, especially when you can't factor in the fact that most of these things a lot of these are actually a lot of these companies do things in that market, like Amazon and etc. Those especially that look like they're doing a monopoly. And also we think this is really good, because when companies merge together, they not only give information, they also give capital. So we think that this actually makes it better, makes it easier for these countries to innovate. Like they touch on how innovation will be significantly worse, but I've told you innovation will still be good because competition will still exist. And not only that, we think innovation would be better in our side of the house, because innovation in hours of the house, they're now going to, because innovation now, like these companies will have more capital, and they're going to they will be more willing to invest larger amounts of money to create better new and better information innovation, while smaller companies would be more wary to actually invest that much amounts of money because they're comparatively smaller. Okay, and then finally, in my final point, these countries will be easier to control by the government. Why do we think so? We think that our rights, we think that it's going to be easier to maintain our rights in where the whole company is centralized, right? Why do we think so? Because we think that at the end of the day, these companies have different privacy policies, right? And it's going to be difficult for the government to implement a policy that is able to be very widespread across these, if there's a lot of different companies. While in ours of the house, if there's only one company, if there's the amount of company is limited, it's going to be easier for the government to control them. And finally, we think it's going to be also much better in our side of the house, because at least right now the government is able, right now, because at least now the government is able, because even if anything does go wrong, it's going to be easier as the people to unify and to protest against whatever thing that they're doing that is wrong. So we think that that is why we think it's going to be much better if companies are allowed to mergers. Thank you very much.